Hello, welcome back to the Tonic Accord podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Colombia as well as other countries in Latin America. Updating you on some of the civic unrest we're seeing in these areas, updates on environmental issues, political issues, and kind of how that region of the world is doing coming out of the coronavirus pandemic. My name is Drew Nepoli. I work in political media, and I'm a Chapman University graduate in political science. And I'm joined here by my friend and co-host Alex Kapitko, who's also a graduate in political science. And tell us a little bit about what you do, your certifications, and why we're talking about this today.
Yes, sir. I am currently working for a think tank out of Africa, where basically we write economic and political proposals. I might be working as a policy advisor with kind of a police reform group, and I'll be starting a master's in public policy and administration soon in Chicago, Northwestern. So yeah, keeping busy, not staying sane. Fun.
I think also we're both. I mean, obviously, we're both white dudes from America, but I think we both of us have an affinity for Latin America. I've spent a good amount of time there. You spent a lot of time in Spain, but also studying Latin America. And so, yeah, anytime these stories hit, I feel a little I feel personally interested, and invested, and then also on top of it, as far as Colombia. I have some very good friends of mine that I've known for a long time that are from Colombia. I'm, American citizens, but from Colombia, and they've been posting about this a lot recently. And that's what piqued my interest of like, oh yeah, what is going on? And so, yeah, let's kind of dive into it. So I want to give a quick, synopsis, and then we'll of course get delve into it a little bit more. But not long ago, in April. Colombia's government submitted a tax reform bill. The idea was to increase taxes and close tax loopholes that they were. The argument that these tax loopholes were hurting the country and were also preventing it from getting a higher investment grade on the international scale, like business scene, I guess. And so the idea was to increase some taxes, close some tax loopholes, and that overall that would benefit the government of Colombia. However, coming out of the coronavirus pandemic, tax increases are never popular, and I think they're also significantly less popular when you're coming out of, tragedy or recession or whatever you want to call this pandemic. I think adding tax increases on top of that is going to piss a lot of people off. Well, turns out it did, and these tax increases led to protests. However, the response to the protests by the Colombian police was very violent and led to deaths. And now, over the last few weeks, we're seeing at least 25 people have died, including one police officer, in these protests in Colombia over this tax reform bill. The tax reform bill was withdrawn. The government felt the pressure from the protests, and the tax reform bill was withdrawn. So it's no longer in play. However, I think it's fair to say that the protests have taken on a new life to be more against police brutality as a whole, to represent other things like indigenous rights. There's now indigenous rights activists and environmental activists now joining protests, and kind of just anti-government corruption in general. And so even though the catalyst for the protests is this tax reform bill, even though that's gone, the protests continue to stay, and it's more kind of anti-government corruption, anti-police brutality, and that is what we're seeing still today. Is protests erupting in Colombia over a wide range of issues, but mainly just disenfranchisement and distrust of the government, and again, especially the police force. And even though the tax reform bill has been withdrawn.
Yes.
So there's the background. I know that was a little lengthy, but yeah, Alex, what do you see out of this? What's like your initial takes? What are your thoughts?
Well, it seems like COVID's kind of brought all the cracks to the surface.
Yeah.
I actually think this tax reform bill was probably correct. To like from what I've gathered, at least from the reading we've done here, it could potentially benefit 19 million Colombians, that are the poorest in the country. And it does look at reforming some of the most significant loopholes. But again, like you said, following a pandemic where, especially in places like Colombia, no one's doing very well, it it means people are going to be angry. And to me, I think the root of these protests is understandable, but people are also just angry at everything. They're scared, they're nervous, and they're struggling. And so I think that we're going to be seeing this a lot through Latin America is that these countries spent exuberantly during the pandemic, and now they're trying to look at how do we pay for it? According to The Economist, since the pandemic, Colombia's deficit tripled by 8%, or tripled, sorry, to nearly 8% of their GDP. Their current president, President Duque, he was kind of elected to bring hope and change. He was pretty young. He was only a senator for, I think, one term. And his goal was to kind of bring change. And unfortunately,
Reminds
it
me of
hasn't
Obama.
happened. Actually, yeah, I think I remember reading like a year ago that people were actually calling him kind of the Colombian Obama,
Yeah.
kind of center right version of Obama, but he's actually lost support on both sides. But to me, this is not about the tax reform bill anymore.
Right.
It's just about Colombia's drug trafficking has gone up. The FARC, which Duque basically had to oversee the outcome of a bill signed between the government and the FARC, for those who don't know, which was a kind of a guerrilla war group that was anti-government. And the previous president, whose name I'm totally spacing on, so forgive me, he signed a major deal with the FARC in 2016, I think, which was huge. But since then, it hasn't really paid out, and there's been a lot of violence against local politicians. Crime is rising, and people are poor. More than 500,000 businesses have closed and stuff like that. So it's people are struggling, and I think this reform bill was kind of a mobilization against them. The problem is Colombia is having a third wave. I saw that in Cali, like 80% of ICU beds are full. So now we're mixing violence, on both sides into that. And I just think this is kind of a harbinger of things to come in Latin America, to be completely honest, because these governments just don't have the surpluses to deal with this, and they need to pay for it, and people are hungry. And yeah, rant aside, like I don't know, man. I think this is just maybe the next year or two in Latin America in general.
It's interesting too because in the case of Colombia specifically, there was a period of years where I think people were really positive, and in fact, that Duce, or I don't know how to pronounce his name, Duce. What is it?
I'm gonna go with Duque.
Duque.
Um,
Where Duque was very popular, and it was because of the deal with FARC. So, FARC is a radical left wing, like I mean, basically communist guerrilla group. They've been living in the highlands of Colombia and fighting the Colombian government for decades. Um, the United States provided arms and surplus military equipment to Colombia's defense forces to fight FARC. Surprise, the Americas doesn't exactly like communist guerrilla groups. That's nothing new. Just to keep that in the context of what's going on in Colombia. And so it was, like you said, you know, decades and decades of violence and guerrilla warfare within the country. Now, in 2016, an agreement was signed that led to relative peace, and people felt really optimistic. And Duque, experienced a time of really high popularity. And an interesting take I've heard about these protests is that the police force has not accepted that era is over, right? It's this idea that, like, you know, protests, anti-government protests in the past in Colombia were result of FARC, were guerrilla tactics, or maybe had an air of militarization, right? So there's like a protest movement that sparks, and then FARC is also using that chaos to maneuver, right? That's not the case, at least from what I understand and what we know. That's not the case that's happening right now. This is not a political thing as far as FARC. It's not like a far left communist uprising. It's just citizens disenfranchised with the current government. But I think the response is still in that mindset of we're fighting a war, right? And in fact, there was even a anecdotal but important story about a journalist, a Colombian journalist that was beaten and forced to drink urine of the Colombian police. And when he was getting beat, and he said something along the lines of, "Stop! Like, I'm a human rights defender. I'm a human rights defender," something like that. And they beat him and they said, no, you're not. You're a gorilla. You're a piece of shit gorilla. So obviously the police think that these people are still like far left guerrillas, even though they're not. They're just civilians. And so I think that mindset, like it's like I mean, there's a famous. I mean, this is very different. I'm just for the sake of the podcast. There's a really funny Bill Burr joke about how he gets all angry and it gets his dog really angry, but then he has to try and calm his dog down, being like, no, there's actually nothing wrong. Like I'm just angry at something else. But you rile up this dog to get so angry, but then when there's nothing to get angry at, it lashes out, and that's what I think is happening. Is you had this force for decades that was you're designed to take down guerrillas, you're designed to take down cartels, you're designed to military style defense to take out left wing guerrillas and to take out cartel drug whatever traffickers. And then now it's like actually and then boom, you have some civic unrest today. And so they're geared up, they're ready to go. They're like a Rottweiler, super angry. And you're like, no, hold on though. These are not guerrillas. These are not traffickers. These are Colombian citizens. These are just protesters. These are peaceful protesters at first. And so the response by the police is way overpowered compared to what it should have been. And I think it's just because they're used to a different era.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and no, that's a really good point because it does seem like that's the case here, and I'm sure both of us could draw some parallels. Obviously, not quite the same, but there are definitely parallels in the United States, and like it kind of pulls me back to like you can symbolically change the issue or have some like superficial peace deal, but if you don't change the system and the training and the ideology behind it, then you're not going to get very far.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
Yeah, like to me, Alvaro Uribe, who is the previous president who actually did sign that deal with the FARC before he stepped down. Now, side note, he's actually distanced himself from Duque, who they're in the same party, so you would think they would not be distancing themselves from each other. But yeah, like it seems like this was something for Uribe to get the Nobel Peace Prize. It looks great, right? Like again, Drew, time and time again, we've talked about it on this podcast. Symbolic peace is not always actual peace.
Right.
Like a lot of these Nobel Peace Prize winners or candidates or whatever, it sometimes doesn't last and there's a lot of flaws. And, I was really happy because Colombia, since I've like been following it, it sounds like it's really cleaned up. There was a time when, Americans were told don't go to Colombia. And now there's a burgeoning kind of artistic scene, burgeoning businesses, and then the pandemic hit. And it really seems like, again, that kind of brought out the cracks. And I think that's a very interesting point, though, about how the police are still responding to counter-protesters and protesters like it's the FARC.
Right.
And that is interesting to me because now it seems like both sides, again, because no one's willing to talk, which is, a big theme of this podcast, conversation, finding middle ground. No one's willing to do it. And there was a great Guardian article that was kind of talking about how this has happened. Like, Duque is now promising a national dialogue, over, like free tuition and stuff, but he scrapped everything else and it ignored broad calls for police reform. And it seems like I think it was last week I was hearing, so this is a little outdated, but I was hearing like the police were just indiscriminately shooting people. Like there were like 15-year-old kids getting shot.
Yeah.
Like the police had no care. And like, again, like that's not how you maintain a civil society. You need to treat everyone under the constitution of the country and under their rights as a citizen of their country. And it seems time and time again, people in power don't get that. And, honestly, I don't blame Duque for this. It sounds like he's in a very like tight spot.
Yes, it does.
And to be honest, again, like I'll say it again, that tax reform bill actually sounded good, but it just seemed to kind of stir the pot. And you're right. Like it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, just because it sounds like this would mean a complete kind of overhaul actually of the police and the whole system.
There's an interesting. I was reading about like the different types of police there are, because the shooting has started with, I think it was like the Colombian equivalent of the National Guard. So there is a task force for protests where the guys wear like a ton of, like, they almost look like hockey goalies. I think the New York Times had the best picture. It's this guy right here. So this guy, he wears all this stuff, but actually those are like protest riot dudes, riot police. and they're not actually allowed to carry lethal weapons at all. They don't have any lethal weapons. They have all this armor, but it's like I think they have like some tear gas, batons, like that kind of thing. So they're barred from having any lethal weaponry. They're designed to be these tank guys to just like control crowds. It actually makes sense in my. I mean, they're scary as hell, right? But obviously, if you did have a legitimately rowdy crowd, you do need some people to control it. I understand that happens. So yeah, I mean, like, so what's interesting is these are not the guys shooting them. These are, I'm sure that I'm sure that there's probably some other stuff going on. I imagine some of the beatings probably happened by these dudes, but the actual shots being fired are the National Guard brought in because things escalated, right? So things would escalate. A couple of these guys beat a couple people. A couple of the people in civilians start throwing back tear gas, maybe start throwing bottles. Things get escalated. Now you have the National Guard coming in, and apparently the National Guard is not issued this armor, but they are issued weapons. They are issued guns. So you have originally a highly armored person with no lethal capabilities other than beating the shit out of you, but then the reinforcements were lightly armored people with high lethal capabilities. So when those people got threatened, when the National Guard felt like things were getting out of hand, they didn't have any other way of controlling than firing their weapons. So that's now where we're seeing, okay, well, kids are getting killed, people are dying. Multiple dozens of people are dying because now the response by the National Guard escalated things to the use of lethal force. So that is where we're seeing the deaths coming from.
Damn. Yeah, and you would think there would be some middle ground, right? Between like we need reinforcements and we're gonna start open firing. Like I just don't know. Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think would take to change that? Like, some like more cooperation, more training. Like to me, that just seems like you have two completely separated, units that like the overlap causes death.
I mean, look, again, I'm certainly no expert, and I'm even less so in Colombian government and politics and their institutions. But I have to imagine similar to what I like that take about how the police is responding to things like they've used to, but in a different context. I think that's just it's like now. I think you need to have a leader that understands. I need to they can install a head of the police chief or whatever that understands that we're in a new world for Colombia now. We're not fighting FARC. We're not in an era where we're constantly fighting left wing guerrillas. At least for now, if the peace holds, who knows? That could come back, of course. But like adjusting that mentality, and again, also literally adjusting the equipment, maybe not taking as much military style equipment. Again, drawing parallels to the United States. I mean, Colombia is not the only Colombia's not the only country with a problem with militarized police. I mean, that's a conversation in the United States we have today over the massive military style APCs some police forces have. So maybe that it's that idea of changing the rhetoric and changing the way you view policing. It is not fighting a war. It is nothing like fighting a war. It is everything to do with protecting and serving a community, which is very different. So I think that mentality shift, like just Colombia in general, like the military or the militarized police there has to have that mental shift.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think it's the mindset. Like again, like I said, you can change your government. You can symbolically end a very long lasting crisis. But if the training and the actual apparatus of doing it doesn't change, it's going to stay the same. And I think that's true with the United States as well with police. But obviously we're not going to get into that. But to me, also, there's a political issue to this too. Not separating us from the just devastation and tragedy here, but Duque is completely politically isolated. He has no stable majority. That Uribe, the former president who was kind of instrumental in making this truce with the FARC, he's distanced himself from Duque. And the worst part is that there's a far left guy who likes Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez, who is running in Colombia, and he wants to print more money to solve the issue. And I'm just worried that Colombia, man, I was actually just so far thinking about how Colombia's got so far. And then the pandemic came, and now it seems like Colombia's in that pendulum again. Okay, they tried out center right, so now they're just going to jump back to far left, And I think that's what we're going to see potentially out of this is the protesters and this reform movement siding with this guy who, did I write his name down? Yeah, Gustavo Petro, who is just a very far left socialist who likes what Venezuela's doing. And then we're just going to probably see more unrest. And so that's why I think it's just this cycle. And until you fix the like root of the problem, it's just going to maintain the same. And like it's just too bad. Like my one solution though I would have is that I was reading that 60% of Colombians work in the informal economy, right? So they're
Right.
not taxed. They're making less than the state would require, and no one has tabs on how well they're doing. I would just say the informal economy needs a spotlight on it, and it needs to be made mainstream. Obviously, like cocaine and that stuff's not going to be made mainstream unless you legalize it, but I think that's the big issue in a lot of Latin America is that people are just making money under the table and they're not being taxed, they're not part of the system, and these countries are not keeping tabs on their citizens. Not in like a creepy Big Brother way, but just in like there's not enough people paying into the system or getting aid. And I think it's all kind of rooted in this like you talked about the FARC, that and then this informal sector I think came to head with COVID, and it's going to be a problem. I'm curious before we get out of here. There were a couple other countries briefly to talk about. You sent that great article about Honduras. What's happening there? Because I think it's all kind of linked in a weird way.
Yeah. This is one that I follow like environmental news. I follow subreddits regarding environmentalism as well as indigenous rights and indigenous justice. Those two things coincide a lot in Latin America and South America, and they're
Mhm.
often the subject of oppression. It's like to be an environmentalist in America is very different than being an environmentalist in a developing nation in South America. To be an environmentalist in America means I got my Nalgene bottle, I donate to the Sierra Club, I vote with people that I think value the environment, and then I have a recyclable straw and I go about my day. To be an environmentalist in South America is risking death. And so, if we're seeing here, environmental activists are being killed in Honduras over their opposition to mining. There's a national park in Honduras that was. The government has slated 200 hectares of it to be mined. And this is just one of many instances of like this, of like native land, indigenous land, or even just public land being sectioned off for industrial purposes. And people have been fighting back in the form of like occupation. So right here is they have a camp here called the Camp in Defense of Water and Life. This is in the Carlos Escaleras National Park. And they're protesting the permits given out by the government to use it for a mine. Even though the mine's not even up yet, there's already been an upset to the local community because the guy developing the mine is building roads. He's building roads which are leading to pollution in the local waters. This happens all the time with construction, even agriculture, pesticides, like any kind of construction material or pesticides can leak into the water systems and threaten the health of a water system in an area. I even saw this firsthand in Costa Rica when I did my studies down there looking at sustainable development. And so one is multiple. So in 2019, 12 people were arrested that are part of this camp, and then that have been, the charges faced were usurpation, arson, robbery, unlawful detention, illicit association, and aggravated robbery. A litany of charges on people just for, protesting for environmental movement. Multiple people have died. I see it probably once a month in the news threads I follow about environmentalism. Like once a month, there's an environmental activist that's been found with, you know, burn marks, 2 shots to the head in Honduras, in El Salvador, in Brazil, especially. A lot of environmental activists are just found dead in Brazil because they're trying to stop industrial mining and industrial logging. And so this is A UN group has even said that the detention of these people protesting at this camp in defense of water and life is arbitrary and has called for them to be released. And so it's just one of these examples of how different the fight is for some of these issues in other parts of the world. Like environmentalism almost is, I feel like is so important, but in America it almost gets like a bad rep because of like the, oh, straws and turtles noses, or oh, I gotta, these paper straws at Starbucks are so lame. Or it's like for other people it is literally life and death. It is literally the waters in my environment are polluted by mining companies that I had no control over the ability to give them the permit or anything like that. And because I'm protesting this, I am now being either illegally detained or murdered.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very well said. I mean, yeah, like it's interesting you brought this up because it triggered a few memories from I think last year. I read about Honduras in this book called The Lost City of the Monkey God. I want to say it was called. It was either Monkey God or Monkey King, but it was basically about a lost temple by this indigenous group that no one ever studied in Honduras. It was probably Incan, pre-Incan, and the archaeologists from the U.S. and the U.K. just to get there, they faced just issues left and right from the military and other security forces. They're like, okay, we're in a national park, we're in a reserve, but we don't feel like it. Like there's people after us, just every day. And I like remember that when I was in Costa Rica when I was much younger, like I barely remember it, but I remember my parents were telling me like when we would drive through the rainforest in like Tamarindo and Arenal and stuff, it would be like there were police that just actively were not supporting that. And same in Peru. I mean, I talked to people there, and it's like it seems like environmentalists in Latin America are up against the state. It seems like they don't have really a apparatus because, like in the U.S., I think why it's become so toxic is that well, not toxic. Like I don't want to sound like some anti-environmentalist, but I think it's become toxic because you just have people buying Teslas and telling you to,
It's perceived
you know,
differently. It's perceived differently.
Exactly. But like you said, there it is life and death. And, it's, I mean, the irony is, well, not really irony, but it's just like these companies are multinational. These companies in these countries, they are like this one in Honduras. I was reading that Canada and the US, like it doesn't want to do anything because it's receiving so much buying power. It's exporting heavily to the United States and Canada, and it doesn't want to step up to this because money's important. And like I feel like governments need to be held more accountable and protect their own people, not just economic and national interests. Like the term "banana republic" comes from Honduras because of the banana trade and the idea of they were propping up dictators basically to make money off of bananas, like the U.S. was. And like this whole thing needs to change, man. Like this whole thing needs to change. And like I think you're right. We, especially in Latin America, need productive environmentalism, and we just need people that are actually using a platform to do so. And it seems like government and military and police and security forces don't care about the environment because they're propped up by these kind of national interest based governments. I don't know. That wasn't worded well, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I feel.
Industry, man. I mean, just whether it's government owned or owned by a multinational company, it's still the idea is that one entity, the state, uh, wants to exploit resources, and these people feel that they were here first, or not, even if it's not indigenous based land, it's still public land, and that it shouldn't be exploited as such. I want to give an idea of just how serious this kind of thing is. I'm just reporting here that Honduras is the deadliest place in the world for environmental defenders. Hundreds have been killed since 2009, including the indigenous environmental leader Berta Caceres, who was assassinated in 2016. So far, 8 people who have opposed this one mine in Honduras, 8 people who have opposed it have been killed, putting its owner, Inversiones Los Pinares, at the center of a deadly environmental conflict in the mineral-rich Bajo Aguan region. So, like, again, like I'm not really like I don't I'm not trying to like promote a solution to this. I mean, obviously, I think what should happen is people should not kill each other over mines. I think we really need to take into consideration our industries and how they affect the environment, especially indigenous sovereignty, right? I think that. But I'm not going to sit here and solve this problem, obviously, and I'm certainly not the authoritative figure on this issue. I simply wanted to bring it to a light because of how real this kind of thing is for so many people. And like you said, like, environmentalism in America is perceived so differently. It's buying a Tesla and it's, recycling. And here it's getting assassinated, right? Like I think it'd be crazy. It'd be wild if someone like Steve Irwin was like murdered. I mean, he was killed
He
by
was technically
he
murdered.
was murdered by a stingray. But no, but I mean, like I'm trying to think of like I'm trying to think of someone in this context that like to ring this home, or like a I don't know who's an environmental hero in the U.S., but like yeah, like a Bear Grylls. Like imagine if Bear Grylls was like, protect our water, and then just got like double tapped, and we're all just supposed to accept that. Like no, people would be like, no, oh my God, you can't kill. Like that is every day. That's every day for people in South America. That if you speak out against these industries, you risk assassination. So I don't know. I just wanted to for a lot of people, I don't think they realize how intense the fight is for environmentalism out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I real briefly want to touch on El Salvador, but before
Sure.
we do, I was just going to say that, like, I think you're right. And at least from my, like, obviously uninformed, I don't know much about environmentalism in Latin America, but from what I've seen, it seems like in the US they have figureheads that are good at swaying public opinion. Like, like Honduras doesn't have a Leonardo DiCaprio who's making documentaries about it.
Sure.
It seems to be an indigenous problem mainly in a lot of these countries. And for that reason, I don't think there's enough ears listening. And it seems like in the US and Europe and a lot of Western countries, there's a figurehead of it. And it seems like Latin America doesn't have it because the public is either unaware of it and the governments don't care. So
Or
yeah, I
anytime you
mean,
anytime you start to have a figurehead, they get assassinated,
right,
like Berta Caceres. So,
right, right.
yeah, if you do start to have a leader, they get whacked.
Which would just like imagine if Leo DiCaprio, who I don't actually think is a great environmentalist to be honest, but at least he's bringing awareness to people who don't know anything about it. But imagine if he just got whacked. Like
Yeah.
that just wouldn't be possible in a lot of the West. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean it could be,
yeah,
I guess.
I
But
know, but I know, but I mean, that's the kind of thing is like I think that yeah, I think environmentalism is cozy in the United States. Not that everyone that is an environmentalist is like this. I'm not saying that. I just think that the perception of environmentalism in the United States is that it's like slacktivism, and
yes,
where in the world it is not, and out there, and there are activists putting their life on the line for protecting our planet, and I think it's honorable and brave.
absolutely,
Yeah, but yeah, let
absolutely.
us know what's going on in El Salvador, and then we can wrap this episode up.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I think a lot of people know that Biden is having some problems at the border. I think a lot of it is overhyped. Fox News, I think early on, kind of bought into it and decided to change it. And now close to 50% of Americans do think there's a crisis at the border. And the reason why I'm mentioning that first is because El Salvador is one of the countries where we need to work with their government in order to make a fix. And Biden has been talking about that under Obama. He actually met with a lot of Central American countries and did make some leeway there. But the problem is that Nayib Bukele, who is I think he's like 39. I want to well he's around 40. He's the authoritarian president of El Salvador right now. He won with like 90% of the vote, which is always to me a little bit questionable.
Yeah.
But he was voted. The Economist a year ago said he was the most popular president in Latin America with that 90% vote. But it turns out he has replaced the Supreme Court. He has sacked the Attorney General, and he controls a supermajority inside of the Congress, Parliament, that all that jazz. And the problem is this actually kind of sounds like Viktor Orban in Hungary, but like El Salvador version. This is like a very young aspirational politician who basically is very far right. He doesn't believe in abortion in any circumstances, and he's definitely down to punish critics. And so the worry is that this is only the beginning of his realm of just terror, where he like I think it was last year he basically wanted to lock up people even if they went out to buy groceries during the pandemic, and the Supreme Court was like, no, you can't do that. So he ordered the police to basically block the gates at the Supreme Court until the decision was changed. Like this guy's an autocrat, and he's quite a scary autocrat, and he's slowly like consolidating power in El Salvador. And the problem is that the economic situation is getting worse in El Salvador, and Kamala Harris has called out him, but Biden has remained relatively milquetoast on it because he needs to work with this guy to help quell immigration into into the United States, because El Salvador is one of those main ones that is seeing a huge, movement of people outside of El Salvador, less than Mexico, for example. And so Revista Factum, which is a local magazine in Honduras, says that democracy has died in El Salvador. His party won 56 of 84 seats in the recent government. Another El Salvadorian magazine said that we are at the start of a long night as democracy is going to sleep. It sounds like this guy's going to be around for a long time. And the problem is he's in his late 30s or early 40s. So he's going to be around for a while. And he's basically consolidated power to the point where like it'd be really hard to get rid of him. And it sounds like what happened was there was a civil war in the late 90s, and the government secretly negotiated an amnesty law that helped bring the war to a close quickly, but it kind of didn't actually set up a good institution for elections or parties or democracy going down the road. So it basically gave these spoils and independent like power to the remaining political parties. And this Bukele guy just stepped outside, started a new party, and is kind of destroying El Salvador as we speak. So the reason I bring it up is because it is relative to the immigration problems on the southern border of the U.S., is because it's going to be really hard, I think, for Biden to actually work with this guy and do anything.
Son, it looks like we're gonna have to pay him.
Yes.
It looks like the United States is gonna have to pay this guy to avoid a border crisis. Great, yeah, another young, charismatic, authoritarian asshole. Awesome, that's great. Yeah, I didn't know much about Bukele. Yeah,
Me
I'm just
neither.
and so definitely one to keep an eye on. It looks like he is going to appeal to the United States and China to help fill the gaps in his government's budget. And yeah, so we're basically going to be paying a guy to hopefully avoid a border crisis, which apparently is also already happening. Very strange,
Absolutely.
very strange. But yeah, I mean, but certainly though the take is that, I mean, the main source of this migrant crisis is it's not Mexico anymore. It's the Central American triangle. It's Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and and this guy is helping fuel it. And we'll have to see what happens because man, yeah, it's a strange one. I didn't see this guy coming at all. That's gonna
No.
wrap up this episode of the Tonic Accord. We touched on a lot of icebergs, so please don't fault us for not going super in depth and onto any of these issues. We are not experts, but we certainly are like to stay informed on these topics. I think we have valid opinions, and we want to hear yours as well. Comment and leave a comment on the YouTube, leave a comment on the Twitch. Any We do read them, and we encourage a conversation around these issues. So let us know your thoughts. Stay tuned for more Tonic Accord.
Sounds good.